You guys have his bio in front of you. I don't need to tell you that Jay is very proud of continuing the legacy that his father gave to him with his business, and it's his father's input that kind of led to him thinking about how he could better serve his clients. Jay Kempton also is now fully running the Kempton Group and also a founding member of the Free Market Medical Association. Would you join me right now in welcoming Jay Kempton?
Well, good evening, everybody. What a great meal. What a great day that we've had. I was talking with some of you all as we were coming out of the last session, and it seemed like there was kind of consensus out there that this year FMMA convention is quite a bit different than last year, and I think some of us that were involved, especially speaking at last year's FMMA, kind of felt like we were circus performers up here, and we had a very interested audience, but it was definitely, we're interested in this, and there were some skeptics that were in the room, and we're just interested to see what we were going to do next. It seems like the vibe tonight and today is completely different. Almost everybody in the room here has either decided that this is the way forward and they're here to figure out how to make it better or not. There's just not, I think we have seen the beginning of the movement, and I think that was last year. I think this year we're starting to pick up some speed. Since we've been doing this great experiment, which I kind of am like Keith, I tell my family and clients that everything that we all are doing here should not be news, shouldn't be interesting. Everything that FMMA represents is what almost every other industry already has. The only reason it is interesting is because the business of healthcare is so convoluted and so just totally broken. So as we've been doing this for a few years, we have noticed at FMMA and dealing with different medical providers and different, I'm going to kind of change a lexicon a little bit as I start here. I don't like providers. And honestly, I don't really even like calling medical physicians doctors. I look at it from an economic standpoint. I look at medical providers as sellers of healthcare goods and services. And I look at patients and self-funded employers and insurance companies as buyers of healthcare goods and services. And I think it's important to look at it that way, because we know that the good doctors in this room and the good facility managers, they definitely have their patients' best interests at heart and are going to do the right thing by their patients. But when we start talking about cost and quality, there's always going to be some underpinnings that need to have a kind of a sound economic basis. And so we do like to talk about buyers and sellers. And as we've talked more and more with buyers and sellers, we've come up with a need to, if FMMA is going to provide a catalyst, or as Keith and I like to say, pour gasoline on this movement, because we all have, Keith and Charles and myself, we all have day jobs. And so the FMMA was really just a catalyst to promote change and hasten some market-based reforms. But we did notice that we needed, if we're going to be the Free Market Medical Association, we needed to have some pillars. That what does it mean to be a participant of the Free Market Medical Association? What does that really mean for those buyers and those sellers? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. The three big pillars that we're going to speak a little bit more about is pricing is not a product. Also, willing buyers and willing sellers determine value. That's it. No other third party. Cash price equity, and then the road to recovery. We really do feel like this is these pillars are very, very important to the continued success of all of our efforts. Keith, I think, had mentioned in his opening remarks that the free market functions, in most other industries, but just not in healthcare. And we've kind of drawn some conclusions as to why. Starting with the very first, pricing is not a product. I own a TPA, and so actually I was just mentioning at dinner with Chris here that when as a TPA, I have always employed different technological systems, different negotiators, PPO networks, management systems, management vendors, all to keep an eye on the medical providers here in the room. And most of those vendors that I did business with, or a lot of them, they would sell me and my clients pricing from the healthcare provider community. They would literally take the pricing from a medical provider, which pricing should be free in a free market, the actual price, put it in a box, and then sell admission to the box, bringing no value whatsoever. And so pricing is not a product, it's the care. The price of the care is really what we need to be focused on. And so for the medical practitioners, for the facilitators in the room, if you ever do see somebody that approaches us or we start to interact with, and it starts to look like the actual pricing is something that they are trying to sell, then they're a troll. Now, I want you all to understand that we're not talking about other good and valuable services that say a facilitator would help between those two parties. This is just simply the pricing of pricing. That's a problem. Pricing, of course, should be driven by the marketplace. What a willing buyer and a willing seller are willing to exchange, again, in a free choice kind of way. Layers between the buyer and the seller add cost to the ultimate transaction. There's also a lot of vendors that operate in your space and my space that they sell a product that solves a problem that they create. Right? It's true. It is absolutely true. And self-funded employers have paid good money for those services that tend to perpetuate the problem. Again, out-of-network negotiators are kind of top on my list, and that would be for the medical physicians in here. That would be when somebody goes to instead of going to an in-network provider, which is good, and they go to an out-of-network provider, which is bad. The price out-of-network may be higher, may be lower, but you hire somebody else to come in there and negotiate you a discount off of that price. There's really no consideration taken into is the price that was originally charged, was that a good price or a bad price? It's simply a matter of selling that discount. And that, again, if the free market works and we have bundled transparent pricing out there, you can start to see that there are a lot of third-party interventionists that simply don't have a place anymore. And so we need to be wary of that. Again, pricing is not a product. Moving on to the next pillar is connecting willing buyers and sellers. Free market works when there's freedom of choice. That's freedom to buy or to sell, or the freedom to not buy, or the freedom to not sell. And that should be a decision that's made by the buyer and the seller. Now you think about those concepts that are pretty elementary, and then think about your practice. Think about your employer, and you can see that healthcare has really deteriorated to a point where basic economic concepts just don't even hardly have a place these days. On my slide here, you can see that the free market works when there's freedom of choice. And notice down there that fourth bullet that, again, we believe in buyers, sellers, and then facilitators. Look who's optional. That's me. That's my business. And my employees that are here in the room are going, Jay, don't be so loud about that. But it's true. I ran into a couple of ladies here. I don't know if you all are still in the room, but you know who you are. They work for an employer that is self-insured, and they actually self-administer. So in other words, they're the buyer, they're looking for sellers, and there is no Kempton group. There is no third-party administrator. They do it themselves. And that's perfectly allowable. It's a heck of a job. And if you need any help with that, you can give me a call. But I think it's an important pillar out there for everybody to understand. Once you strip away the buying and selling down to, and again, it's this big, just Gordian knot right now. But if you strip it all down, this is just buying and selling. Excuse me for my selling and buying. I am an Okie after all. But the facilitators are optional. And so for the facilitators that are in the room, we got to really self-police, because we are the ones that are, if somebody's going to inject a layer or a cost and not bring any value, it's most likely going to be one of us. It's going to be a facilitator. It's going to be a TPA. It's going to be a broker. It's going to be, you name it. There's lots of, we believe in market creativity, obviously, and there's probably facilitators out there that haven't even come forth with their product or their service, but it's important that you actually bring value to that transaction. Facilitators should only be involved to the extent that they make the process between the buyer and seller more efficient. Period. There's too many layers between the buyers and sellers that just create havoc and market distortion. TPAs, shopping tools, brokers, and consultants, again, we are those facilitators. And I think, personally, that we have an opportunity to make the free market work better. In fact, I know that is our role, and we'll do a great job of that. But again, if you are a broker or a TPA or a consultant, look at how you get paid. And I know for some of us it is difficult to look at ourselves as far as how we get paid, because we've always lived in a world of bringing product to the marketplace. I think the new world, especially under the Free Market Medical Association and our pillars, it really, the role of the facilitator should be to make the transaction between the buyer and seller more efficient. Pure and simple. If that's not the case, there's one organization that's going to try to out you and put you out of business, and that's going to be the Free Market Medical Association. Because I think that as more and more buyers and more sellers kind of understand what's really required and what's not required, they're going to start calling out the folks that don't bring the value. And I certainly don't want to be one of those folks. So we want to make darn sure that we always bring value, and I think that the other facilitators in the room need to do the same. This is one that we had a little bit of, we had quite a bit of discussion among the three founders of the FMMA, and it has to do with cash pricing equality. And we kind of one way of talking about it is one cash price for all buyers. And it's important, and again, freedom, free markets should mean, well, the buyer, the seller can sell, choose a price any way they see fit. And that's true. I mean, that is truly a pillar of a normal functioning free market. In the sad shape that healthcare is today, again, we really do feel like this one cash price for all buyers is an important one. And the facilitators in the room know what I'm talking about. I don't know whether or not the medical providers necessarily know, but there's a whole concept within managed care and PPO networks of volume for discounts, right? We've talked about today that some of these discounts are very, very dubious. But if a provider is going to step across the line, the seller is going to step across that line into the free market, we do feel like if there is a buyer that comes to you and is willing to pay your cash price, you don't have to sell it to them. You refuse service to anybody that you want. But all things being equal, if they've got the cash, there should be no reason why that price shouldn't be good for them. Whether that cash buyer is somebody walking down the sidewalk with exchange coverage, they have the money and they're going to write you a check, or if it's a self-funded employer through their TPA, or if it's heaven forbid, a fully insured insurance carrier. I mean, honestly, if they want to come to the table with no agenda, no shackles, no conditions, but flash some cash in your face that happens to meet the price that you have online, I'm not going to fault you. They swing a big stick. They bring a lot of volume. We like volume, don't we, as sellers? So, but one cash price for all, it does prevent a lot of the market manipulation and distortion, prevents it from occurring. Anything short of cash, though, in my mind, starts the negotiation. The cash price should be the best price. Cash on the barrelhead. Cash talks, BS walks, right? So if you've got a TPA or an employer or anybody else that says, hey, we're going to pay you cash, but we're going to make the employee meet their deductible first, or we're going to pay 90% of it. Well, there's a cost, obviously, for the collections of those fees, of those dollars that were not paid up front. And so maybe your cash price plus 10% sounds better if it's not cash. Again, you all should have the freedom to set prices any way you see fit, but it needs to be a cash price, or as quick to cash as can be. Another thing about cash price equality that we believe very strongly in is that right now we have a new employee at the Kempton Group that we went on a trip yesterday, and I had an employee that had been with me for a long time and a brand new employee, and we started talking about the free market and everything else, and one of them, and I heard it 125 times from me, and the other one was brand new, and I used the analogy of the shoe store, that there's no way that if a shoe store decided to start raising their prices by 300% so they could give you a 50% off discount, it would never fly, because most consumers of shoes can see right through that ruse. We see that when it happens out there in the marketplace because we have a pretty good feel for what a gallon of milk or what a pair of shoes should cost. But when it comes to a laparoscopic gallbladder removal or an ACL repair or a shoulder MRI, buyers don't have a clue what that should cost. They have no idea because they've never seen it in the marketplace in a comparative form where they can go from one seller to another seller to another seller. Part of the reason they're not able to do it, we know there's all the layers, but another thing is because you've got this volume for discounts thing that's out there. Depending on who the buyer is, depends on what the cost of the medical care is. That, in my mind, is on purpose because it creates a very ignorant buyer. There's no price awareness for medical care whatsoever. But again, one cash price can serve as a pricing benchmark that slowly but surely the American public and employers will start to become aware and start to be able to seek value. And so that's why we believe in cash price equality. Keith had mentioned that he whispered in my ear at dinner that he had to alter some of his remarks after he saw my slide presentation, because his remarks duplicated a lot of what my presentation was. And I was like, that's kind of funny, because we do kind of start to think the same. This slide right here, you've already seen this, because other speakers have made a lot of these points, which I think is great. Either we're all reading each other's press releases, or but I think it has more to do with education, which is just a home run for what we're trying to do. But again, road to recovery, we believe that the self-funded employer they have skin in the game. $1 saved by a self-funded employer because they've sought out high-value health care from a transparent medical provider, that $1 saved is $1 that stays right there to the employer. And so individuals and self-funded employers really are the key. 60+% of employees with private health insurance in the U.S. get their benefits through some sort of self-insured vehicle. Unfortunately, a big portion of those employees don't know that they get their benefits from a self-insured entity, because we've allowed the insurance companies to get into the third-party administration business. And a lot of you all in this room don't know the difference, can't tell the difference between a patient that is with Blue Cross and Blue Shield self-insured or Blue Cross and Blue Shield fully insured. They look, smell, and taste the same. So that's why we're doing a little education here. They pay all their claims from our operating budget or from plan assets if they have a trust. Embracing transparency saves claims dollars. Again, that $1 saved is $1 that stays at the employer to help buy new equipment, expand their business, pay their employees better. It does not, contrary to popular belief, line the pockets of Blue Cross and Blue Shield, but it's our job, all of our jobs, to help start to make a distinction between somebody that's self-insured with a big carrier or with an independent TPA like HealthSmart or like the Kempton Group. And there are other good guys out there, trust me. Without fail, I have never seen an employer that I've done business with that didn't want just a couple of things from their benefits, from their employee benefit plan. And that is, they want happy, healthy employees that show up to work on time, and any way that they can achieve that goal the most cost-efficient way possible, they're interested in that. Which, ironically enough, most of y'all in this room, that's exactly what you want too, if you're a medical provider, because I've talked to a lot of you all. So there's a lot of commonality there between a free market provider and a self-funded employer. The next thing, we think that direct primary care is a huge driver. And I'm going to be redundant because I think Josh or somebody had already stolen my thunder, which is a great thing. But DPC the primary care does control a huge component of medical spend. You also have the ability to influence the healthfulness of patients like no other part of the healthcare system. So instead of, for the facilities that are offering bundled cash procedures out there, it would be great if we had primary care physicians that were in on the joke. And so we weren't out there having to incentivize and educate a patient for bucking the recommendation of their employed primary care physician. We'd rather them just do business with a free market direct primary care physician, right? Moving on. This has been a long day today. Is anybody going to sleep good tonight? I'm sitting here just going, normally I'm a little bit more peppier than this, but I think it's been a great day. Just to give you all a little bit of examples of some of the things that we have done at the Kempton Group. We've been doing this now for almost 5 years. It started off with one crazy medical provider that we figured he was the alpha and the omega of this movement. Little did we know that 5 years later we'd be sitting in a room like this. What a ride. But our Kempton Premier Provider Program, that's just our word. We had to come up with something a little sexier than bundled cash provider. But the procedures are all 100% bundled together. If it's a surgical procedure, we try to have as many pieces of that surgical bundle as under that one cash price. It's really the Surgery Center of Oklahoma model. We incentivize and educate employees and their dependents that if they utilize the services of a free market provider, then it'll be paid at 100%. That provides a pretty good incentive for the patient to choose the better the cash provider. Being that it's a cash provider, we're also able to share with that patient that bundled cash price, because we feel important, even though the patient's not going to have to pay any of it because we've waived all of their out-of-pocket expenses. We want them to understand that a shoulder MRI should cost about $500, not $4,000. And so we do make sure that everybody understands what the price is, even though their employer's paying it at 100%. Besides an incentive, it also puts the medical provider back into the cash business, which we all like cash, right? Our employees are not able to walk in with a roll full of $100 bills. And so our claims department within the Kempton Group, we pay those bundled cash procedures as quickly as humanly possible. And from the time that we get the bill or the invoice from the medical provider, the time that we get a check back in their hands, kind of depending on the employer that we're dealing with and when they choose to fund their medical claims, we can usually get a check back into the provider's hand within 5 days. Anything beyond that, and we start to get nervous. Of course, most of the medical providers that we do business with are like, oh my gosh, you're so much better than Blue Cross or United or anything else. We'll take it at 30. But again, this is a cash deal, so we believe very, very strongly that cash or something that looks really, really close to cash should be the standard. Our program, like I said, we are definitely not the biggest TPA that's doing this, but I think we are the one that's done it the longest. But our savings estimates right now, TPA wide for all of our clients, are in a little bit in excess of $14 million that has been saved to the employer benefit plans out there and for Oklahoma and Texas employers that we do business with. I am blown away by that. I am absolutely stunned. But it's been a fun few years. Some of our renewal meetings have been meetings like I've never had before. I was talking to an employer just the other day that actually 2 of them, and it's not just Surgery Center of Oklahoma, that they had claims about 60% below what the projection was. And it was all because of you all, of the medical providers that are embracing this bundled cash transparency effort. Bundling drives quality. This is something that I learned from Keith, and I think it's one of the coolest things of bundled cash pricing for a facility, that you all actually have a financial incentive to get that patient in, out, and healthy as quickly as possible. So the medical providers are incentivized, because of the nature of the bundle, to be efficient, to choose the right surgeon. And if the surgeon actually has an ownership stake in the facility and they're not the best at the procedure, I understand that there's conversations that take place that they may actually bow out and another surgeon that's a stakeholder in the facility would step up because they're better at that procedure. Chances of getting that person in and out of the OR and healthy without complications drives margin for that facility. For the employers in the room and for all of us patients, because we're all patients, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? That there's actually a tangible financial incentive that's not imposed by the government or Medicare, that when the patient wins, we win. It's a beautiful thing. And like I mentioned, I gave you kind of summary of what we've been doing, but there are other TPAs that are doing the same thing, and they're there to be applauded as well. HealthSmart is here in the room, and for a big, unwieldy beast like HealthSmart to embrace something like this, it's amazing. We're doing something right. No, this is all because of Tom Bartlett, because he and I have this thing going on. But no, they're a good shop, and they're embracing this transparency. They have the ability to drive volume nationwide, and it's a great thing. They're going to really ruffle some feathers out there, but there are others doing it as well. I think I'm about to the end here, aren't I? Yep. Free market providers, we're looking for physicians, surgeons, imaging centers, hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, to be bold. Put your pricing online. Build it and they will come. I mean, we have talked about it today that, if a surgery center posts its price in the middle of the forest, does anybody hear it? But you got to be out there first for somebody to find you. I think I've talked to a few of you all that I don't have business anywhere near your location, but we're going to have a conversation next week about maybe getting your pricing on my website. If nothing else, maybe some other employer in your area will find it. I mean, that's how this stuff starts. You've got to have some sort of a spark that generates a chain reaction. For the providers in the room, you need to find TPAs and self-funded employers and offer your best cash price. There's a medical facility that we do business with here in Oklahoma, and they're a rural facility, and they're struggling like most rural facilities. They have a very nice piece of technology in their hospital. They have a very nice MRI scanner, but not a lot of utilization to it. They're not too far from a major highway, and they say, we just can't bring any volume here. I said, well, do you all know where you make money, at what level you make money? Well, yeah, we do. It's like, well, have you ever thought about maybe adding $200 or $300 to that and renting a billboard out on the highway, the major highway? They looked at me like I was crazy. Why not? Why not? You just got to be bold out there. Build it and they'll come. Nobody's going to know that you've got this great piece of technology. And so instead, they're stuck in a mode of, if they ever get somebody with good benefits walking through the door, all they can think about is how bad can we jab them to make up for our poor volume. And speaking for a TPA and the other TPAs in the room, you're going to have us out there looking after our clients, making sure that you know that that's a pirate ship masquerading as a hospital and not to go there, and which is just going to make your problem worse. So anyway, post your prices online, advertise to get individual patients, bundle procedures to make buying easier. I gave an interview with the Shift Shapers guy, and he just loved this Ford truck analogy, but I think it's good. I'll go ahead and share it with you, and it has to do with bundling. Because we hear from larger facilities, especially hospitals, all the time that they can't bundle their prices. Can't bundle our prices. As we mentioned before, we see that as an opportunity, right? But they can't bundle their prices, impossible, no way can we do it. Because we don't speak for the entire transaction. There's anesthesiology that we don't own those docs, which we, of course they're trying to rectify that, but they don't own them, they don't speak for them. There's a surgical group, we don't speak for them. Well, let's look at that, and let's take that analogy and start talking about buying a Ford pickup truck. Ford does not make every single thing that goes onto that Ford pickup truck. I know for a fact that they buy their tires from Firestone or Goodyear or somebody else. They don't have control necessarily over that. But Ford Motor Company knows very well that they will be judged in the marketplace based on the entire cost of that Ford truck. If they sell a Ford truck at a price that's too high, they're not going to sell any trucks. If they were to say, well, I can't control Goodyear, so I'm just going to carve that out of my price So when you go to buy a Ford pickup instead of a Chevy, you go to the Ford dealership and you look at the window sticker, but it says does not include tires. And you say, well, I got to have tires. I'm not going to have this truck without tires. I kind of look at it, well, I'm not going to have surgery without anesthesia. Well, you're going to have to wait for Goodyear to send you a bill in 3 months. If we're talking about a Ford truck, they would never sell a single one, because you would go someplace that was sophisticated enough to bundle the entire procedure, the entire truck. And because of that reality that Ford has to deal with, I'm sure periodically they have conversations with Goodyear and says, I got to have tires on my truck, but I'm going to answer to your cost or your efficiency or your inefficiency. So it tends to keep that tire manufacturer honest. If they want to play ball, they're going to have to play ball. It can work the same way in healthcare. And there's a lot of facility managers in this room that they see that very clearly, and they're doing that right now. So anyway, that's kind of a nice analogy if for the medical docs and folks in the room, if you can't get it through the thick heads of a CEO you play golf with, that they'll understand the Ford analogy. This slide's totally redundant because we've talked about it today, and I think getting tired. I'm starting to get kind of run on at the mouth. But really the last line there is what I really probably want to close on. For the sellers in the room, run your business like a business. Innovate. I'm still waiting for an orthopedic facility to start coming up with some kind of a bundle for physical therapy, post-operative. And I know it's difficult because each patient changes, is it going to heal differently and everything else. But give me some kind of a indication, kind of like Dr. Smith said today, where maybe it's a toll road with a bunch of different exits. We would love to be able to bundle. And I see Tracy looking at me. She's probably thinking, yeah, that would be kind of nice to have a home where somebody could have it all done and one cash price. That would be a good thing. Bottom line is be innovative, be creative. Compete with your competitor. Novel concept, but I know it's kind of a foreign concept for the medical community. But that's really what we're talking about doing here. Free Market Medical Association's mission really is to try to, again, get those buyers and sellers together. For the medical providers in the room, we want you to be rich and famous. We want you to dominate your competition. We want you to be innovative, be high quality, be low cost. For the buyers in the room, we want to help you find those medical providers that are doing everything they can to provide a high quality product. And we're going to try to do as much as we can to support both those entities. So with that, thank you all so much for coming out and supporting this little project. It's kind of grown into something a lot more than a pet project, but we can't do it without your support. We had a little bit of seed money, but we would really like to get this thing to a point where it actually kind of self-perpetuates. And so go buy some t-shirts. Thank y'all.